So this week we begin the Classic Era, and in history this is known as the Age of Enlightenment. It's approximately 1750 to 1800, and if you recognize any of the people in that picture, you'll recognize the American founding fathers, Thomas Jefferson, George Washington, Ben Franklin, and all the rest. So what does the Age of Enlightenment entail? The Age of Enlightenment is a period of time in Europe when philosophers, writers, political activists, they all question the European aristocracy. And basically, why do we have kings and queens? Why can't we self-government? And this is when the seeds of democracy begin, the American experiment. The Age of Enlightenment basically sees the idea of clarity over complexity. Everything, regardless of what it is, art or ideas, should be clear, not complex. There should be reason and rationale. And most importantly in this era, there's an emphasis on the common people and not the aristocracy. Now the music changes in this era, and it kind of reflects this Age of Enlightenment. What you get is you get a clarity over complexity. In the Baroque era, had a lot of complex things going on in terms of melody and very ornamented and decorated, but Classic era is not like that. It's very clear. There's balanced proportion to the music. The musical phrases are very symmetrical with each other. A Baroque texture is very thick and heavy. A lot of musical sounds piled up on each other in Baroque music, but not in Classic era music. It's very clean and concise. In Classic era music, you'll find that the melody is tuneful. It appeals to the average listener. It's not some of these complex things like Bach might have written in a fugue. The harmony is functional. There are no harmonic surprises. The chords do what they're expected to do. And most importantly, there is no more basso continuo. That is a Baroque aspect of the music. So no more basso continuo. Some new kinds of music develop, and you will be reading about these in your book. The symphony develops in the Classic era. And what the symphony is, it is a composition for the orchestra. And it will have 4 movements. And the first movement is always fast. Then there's a little break, and the next movement is always slow. The orchestra plays a beautiful, slow melody. Then the third movement is a minuet, and basically a minuet is a dance. It's a very graceful dance in 3. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And finally, the last movement is fast. The Classic era also sees the string quartet. Not only does a string quartet mean 4 string players, it's also a type of a composition. It has 2 violins, a viola, and a cello, and it has 4 movements, same as a symphony. So if a composer is going to write a string quartet, they have to write 4 movements. Opera changes in the Classic era. In the Baroque era, opera was about the kings and queens and gods and goddesses. And in comic opera, it's about regular people in amusing situations, and they poke fun at the nobility. And in these operas, they're like romantic comedies. And in these operas, the common people are the heroes, and the nobility is seen as kind of like the buffoons. And our 2 huge composers of the era are Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. Mozart was a child prodigy. From the age 2, he could play the piano, and he was composing. And by the time he was 4, he had written a concerto and an opera by 12. So he was a true child prodigy. Mozart composed music for everything. You name it, Mozart composed it. Operas, symphonies, string quartets, sonatas, concertos, piano pieces, vocal pieces. Mozart wrote constantly. Mozart was also the master of comic opera. He's really kind of the one composer that established this new operatic style. And of all the operas written, Mozart's operas stand in the top of all the operas ever written. And Mozart is one of the three greatest composers of all time, right up there with Johann Sebastian Bach and Ludwig van Beethoven. The other great composer of the era was a guy named Franz Joseph Haydn. And Haydn was a contemporary Mozart. He was older than Mozart, but he had been around for a while. But Haydn's biggest claim to fame, and you will read about it in the book, and you'll basically be listening to Mozart's music and Haydn's music. They're the greatest representatives of the classic era. And Haydn's big claim to fame is he was the father of the symphony and the string quartet. Haydn did not invent the symphony, did not invent the string quartet, but his music were such models of perfection that every single composer after him, including Mozart, said, if I'm going to write a symphony or string quartet, I got to write it the way Haydn did. So that's your little preview of the week of PowerPoint style. Hope you enjoy the week. Thank you.